To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Senator Stec, yeah.
Nothing, no.
We can open up to the privilege of the floor.
Who, anybody?
Nobody has requested it, but you can
Yeah.
Have anything?
Can I unmute? Unmute everybody for a second. The only one that accepted my unmute was Vicky, so unless she doesn't have anything, I think we're good.
I don't have anything.
Okay. I'm remuting you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then we'll keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'll
Senator
watch.
Stec was supposed to be joining us tonight, but maybe he's tied up in Albany and. Approval of the minutes from February 8th, 2021. A motion, please.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from February.
If you made the motion, Gilbert seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of the financial report for February 2021.
I'll make the motion.
Kelly made the motion, second.
I'll second.
Debbie seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Audit of bills, vouchers number 54 to 83 in the general account, $6,506.26. Vouchers number 16 to 28 in the highway account, $13,769.47. And vouchers number 5 to 6 in the VHLS account, $504.96. A motion to accept.
Make a motion that we accept.
Debbie made the motion, second. Favor?
Aye.
Budget report. From legislator Rick Perkins. They had 27 resolutions, 5 modifications to the budget, 11 agreements, contracts to be signed, resolution authorizing the filling of vacancies. Just my reminder that there's a meeting.
Okay.
Resolution authorizing the renaming of community services chemical dependency clinics to St. Lawrence County Addiction Services. Resolution proclaiming February as Black History Month. Resolution proclaiming March as Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Resolution approving the New York State Department of Transportation supplemental agreement for final design for the St. Lawrence County Bridge preservation. Resolution commending Judge Story for adopting new policies associated with the restrictions and cross-referencing pilot pistol licenses in St. Lawrence County. Resolution authorizing the county attorney to render assistance to the city of Ogdensburg for the remediation of several environmental contaminated properties. Resolution setting a date for a public hearing for proposed law reestablishing the St. Lawrence County multi-use trail system and establishing a trail permitting process. Resolution appointing Kelly Pearson as Records Management Officer for St. Lawrence County. Any questions, give Rick a call. Julie, I skipped that all over you. Did you?
I noticed.
Do a presentation? See, you just noticed. You moved me right out of my mind.
Can I just ask maybe the rest of the board how they feel about the county looking at permitting process for the trails?
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up under,
You were, okay.
yeah, other old business. So, you can wait if you want.
That's fine.
Go ahead, Jody.
Make sure it's official here. I made sure to bring it so you know who I am.
Oh, we know who you are.
We've got your number.
So this is real short and sweet. I have been working as the risk manager for St. Lawrence County for the workers' compensation program. Under that program, the towns and villages and the city of Augsburg that participate are covered through the self-insurance workers' comp program the county runs. As part of that process, myself and possibly the county attorney, it won't be, it'll be me, but we'll come out and do audits of the town and village facilities. In this case, it would be this building, highway department, and the fire department. We have sent out contact forms. I think Dick filled out the one for here. So I have contacts for those facilities. Probably for this building, I get a hold of you. We'll come and do the swap to the museum. It's real simple. I'm not here to give anybody a hard time. The point of this is to actually help with any possible OSHA or PESH audits. So if I find it, there's no fine. If they find it, there is. It's also to reduce any possible incident of a workers' comp claim. You know, the idea is to find any hazards that, you know, people that are normally in these facilities may not recognize simply because you're here all the time. There are some new PESH regulations that have come out, which I can point out when I'm here, related to clearance of walkways, stuff like that. The biggest thing that I want to try and do by coming up, and you guys know me, so this is a little different, but I want to get out there so that the board recognizes who I am. When I send a report, I want you to know that it's not a critical thing. It's not me criticizing you for not doing a good job. It's trying to help with when the actual inspectors come through to help avoid any potential issues, and more so to make sure that all the employees of the town are safe. So I will probably be reaching out fairly shortly. I've been trying to do the board meetings first with any towns that I can get to cooperate. It's not 100%. So once I've done this, I will reach out probably to you, Steve Parker for the fire department, try and do it all in one day, figure out the time I can come and just walk through all of it. And then I will send you, Sue, a report with everything that was found, and everything will be ranked by severity. Obviously, if there's something that is an immediate danger to health, then we'll have to pause and see if we can get that fixed on the spot. But most of it is a 30-day thing, and then I follow up. So at the end of the 30 days, I just ask you to send the spreadsheet I send to you back to me with the dates filled in that it was completed, and we keep the document record. And that's about it. So those will probably start in the next month or so. Now that the weather's starting to break, it's a little easier to get out and see facilities and stuff. So
I've been watching.
yeah, no, nobody else there. So that's it. All right, now I'm back to your audio video guy. So
Thank you, Jody. We do miss you.
I'm still here.
I know. I'm the same. And another thing.
Oh, hold on. Oh, he's on.
Okay.
I'm gonna, let me see. I can, there you go.
Good evening, Senator Stec.
Good evening. I apologize. I hope I wasn't first on the agenda.
We moved on. It's okay.
All right. I apologize. How's everybody? Good, I hope?
Yes.
All right. Well, Supervisor, I just got back. We passed the one house Senate bills today. For those of you that aren't too familiar, the governor puts out his proposal in January, and then there's hearings. And from that, the Senate and the Assembly each come up with their own version of a budget. And then from there, the three entities get together and they try to hammer out a budget. So today was the day that we voted on the Senate's wish list, which, as you can imagine, is pretty aggressive, pretty progressive. And usually we'll land somewhere in between the governor and the Assembly and the Senate. But so that went a little long today, which explains why I was a little tardy. I apologize for that. But I appreciate the opportunity to address everybody and say hello. And I hope that COVID is going as well as we could expect for your town. I know that I've heard a lot of good things about both the hub site in Potsdam as well as at Plattsburgh, and you guys are kind of in between the two. So hopefully a lot of your residents are getting vaccinated. But certainly would love take any questions you might have. I'm very good at just rambling, and I don't want to do that. I want to be respectful of your time. But I just in the COVID world, in the Zoom world, there's not a lot of events going on right now that's moving people around, and that's, I guess, intentional. And then on top of that, March is always a tough month in Albany, where I get dragged to Albany more days to work on the budget. But as soon as that budget gets behind us, things slow down again in Albany, and moving around the district will certainly be a focus. But this is my first time getting a chance to address your town board, and I just want to say it's a privilege to represent you. But obviously, this year has been a unusual year for all of us, and sadly, the last 6 to 8 weeks in New York, we've had additional political turmoil in addition to the pandemic. And I don't want to belabor that. And it's I used to be a town supervisor myself, so I want to avoid drifting too far out of the lane of your business and government business and into politics. This isn't an editorial board hearing meeting or anything like that. But needless to say, it's dominating a lot of what's going on in Albany, and it's a distraction. And unfortunately, I think it takes away from the work of government. And at the end of the day, being a local government guy myself, I know that whatever happens in Albany rolls downhill quickly, and you're forced to deal with it. And for that, I apologize. But my phone is always available, and I tell everybody, if you need to get a hold of me, if you need me to be there, if there's something going on that's important and you want me to be at, by all means, give me a ring. And if I can, I will absolutely be present. The last thing I should probably point out while I've got you is we filled out our staff. I kept a couple of Senator Little's staff members, and I brought both of my staff members from the Assembly over with me. And we've rounded out with a couple new people, including I've got one person, like you remember Betty had Paul Maroon, that kind of was like the utility infielder, catching issues for her up there. He lives in Tupper Lake, but he was kind of catching things in the northern half of the district. Well, that person for me is going to be Andrea Dumas, and I'm sure a lot of you know of her. She's a mayor in the village of Malone right now. And so again, nearby, but I point out, one, to let you know that she's an additional resource. You should be aware of who my local staff is up there. She's a part-time for us, and we're excited to have her. But I also, not to take anything away from her, I always like to emphasize to everyone, she is not a replacement for me. She's not a substitute for me. It's not like, well, I hired her, so she's going to kind of just keep an eye on all things, north of Essex County. That's not the intent at all. She's here to supplement my work, and to be more convenient for some people. But by no means should any of you feel like I ever want any of your constituents to have to go through her to get to me. Anyone in Hopkinton can lay hands on me just as easily as somebody in Queensbury, where I live. But she's an additional resource. So another set of ears. Again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's a lot like Paul Maroon did for Betty Little. But with that said, I'd love to answer any questions you may have about either what's going on with the budget or what's going on in Albany. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you tonight.
My question is, as far as the budget goes, it looks like they're going to give us back our CHIP funding. Is that correct?
So the Senate one house, and my understanding, I haven't gone through it, but the Assembly one house, both of them went, and they usually do, they went above and beyond where the governor's numbers were. So the budget number that we're landing on for last year's budget, that's going to wind up here at the end of March, is right around $194 billion. The governor's proposed budget that he rolled out in January was for a little over $196 billion. So a little, about 1% above where we're projected to land. And remember, he made, he went through pains to point out that his budget also assumed only $6 billion from the federal government. But then, he kind of pounded the table and said, but darn it, we should get close to 15 billion. But his budget assumed only 6 billion. Now, it looks like the $1.9 trillion federal stimulus package is going to result in the state of New York bringing in about $12.7 billion. So close to that $15 billion number. Plus, a lot of funds is going to go to local, county and local government schools. In addition to that, so New York, from the federal stimulus, looks like it got a pretty sizable amount of funds flowing in. Now this is where my criticism of the one house bills will start. So the governor proposed a $196 billion budget. Well, the Assembly's version of the budget, their starting point for negotiations is $208 billion. And the Senate version is $210 billion. So in both the Senate and the Assembly one house budget proposals today, they are proposing a full restoration and additional money in winter recovery and CHIPS funding. The AIM, both the Senate and the Assembly restore the AIM funding. Bottom line is they said no to very little. So, but now they will negotiate with the executive. Do I think that there'll be, that there'll be an accommodation for our CHIPS funding, our winter recovery funding, and AIM, the three that I just picked on? I'm sure that those numbers will all come in higher than the governor's proposal. Will it be a full restoration? I think in the instance of CHIPS and AIM and winter recovery, yes. I think if you were concerned about those numbers, I think it's the likelihood of you seeing, the numbers that you're used to continuing is very good. But like Yogi Berra says, it's not over till it's over.
Vicky's raised her hand.
Okay,
Hang on one second, I gotta unmute.
hang on, we have a question from an audience member.
Sure.
Okay, Vicky, I think you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, Senator Stec, I was just wondering if there's been any consideration to getting legislation so that we can register UTVs. It's bringing a tremendous amount of revenue to the state of New York. And this is budget time, and money they're losing on registrations and person-to-person sales on sales tax. I was just wondering where that's at.
All right. Thanks, Vicky. Great question. And by way of background, because I gotta keep reminding myself I'm new, so I shouldn't assume that anyone's familiar with my background. But so I was in the Assembly for 8 years, and I was the ranking member on the Environmental Conservation Committee for all 8 years that I was in the Assembly, and I'm the ranking member in the Senate Environmental Conservation Committee. I point that out to just let you know that this UTV issue, I'm very familiar with it. I am in the corner of allowing more UTVs. My general answer to Adirondack recreation, and I suppose it might make some people grit their teeth and what exactly does that mean? But I always have said that people don't realize how big 6 million acres is, and half of that 6 million acres is owned by the state of New York. So there's enough room for everyone to have something everywhere. It's not to say UTVs all over the place or horseback riding everywhere, snowmobiling everywhere, but we should be able to, if the concern about UTVs that the environmentalists have is that they're bad for the environment, they're going to make a mess, then you regulate them, you control where they can go, you put rules on them. We can all debate, where the right place to, strike that balance is. But to this point, the history has been that, the Tug Hill, the Southern Tier, the North Country have often wanted to push for allowing UTVs that, they're like everything else, they've gotten bigger and heavier. And so the current law, doesn't allow for them as the new ones are coming out. And the environmental groups have resisted it. I mean, they've drawn a line in the sand, and they're frankly, they're very adamant in their opposition to them. So that's the uphill fight that we're having. I think I don't want to speak for, everybody in the North Country, but let's put it this way. I'm not aware of anyone on either side of the aisle in either the Senate or the Assembly in the North Country that wouldn't like to see UTVs authorized. But it's met with a lot of resistance from environmental groups. And guess what? They bend the ear on the folks that live in Manhattan and Queens and Brooklyn and it's really hard. So it's been talked about for years. But the environmental groups have been able to kill it among some of my colleagues, on the other side of the aisle mainly, and also from New York City. And there's a lot more of them than there are just population. So the politics of the UTVs in New York City is, no, they're bad for the environment, so therefore let's oppose them. And it's a fight that we'll continue to have, but has there been recent movement on that front? No, there hasn't, Vicky.
Thank you.
Well, like I said, I apologize. I wish I had a better answer, but that's where it is. You're welcome.
Any other questions for him? No questions. So we thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. And
No, my pleasure. And again, let me just emphasize again for you all. If you need me, I'm a phone call away. I'm an email away. We're very good at responding to, if people write us a letter, they're going to hear back from us. That, that to me, that's the absolute minimum that an elected official needs to do, is make sure you're communicating with the people you represent. And for, those that are listening, my background, having grown up in Queensbury, my father's a retired forest ranger. My mom is a retired high school secretary. I grew up in Queensbury. I went to Clarkson University, and I know that's not too far from you all. So, St. Lawrence is in my blood. I met my wife in a bar in Potsdam while I was in college. St. Lawrence County is part of who I am. It really is. I 4 years I went to school there, but I'm a local government. I was in the Navy for 8 years. I got out of the Navy. Navy helped pay for college. Got out of the Navy, moved back home, and I got involved in local government. I was on the zoning board, so I've dealt with zoning issues. And then I was a town councilman for 4 years, and then I was a town supervisor for 9 years. So Warren County has a board of supervisors, so I was also on the county board. So I have a lot of local government experience in my background, which means I know what we do to you and how it affects you now that I'm at the state level. I used to be in your shoes complaining about what, I never complained a whole lot about Betty, but her colleagues would do to us. And, I understand the dynamic, and I want to be helpful. I don't want to make your jobs any more difficult than they have to be. I want to try to run interference and help Albany not be a burden to you. But I've a little bit of experience doing what you do, so I got a great deal of respect of what town boards do, and I know that the state makes it your job even harder. So, but please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and I'll be up there before you know it, Supervisor.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So before we move on, I just wanted to make a note that Debbie Bagnato is joining us as the new deputy town clerk. So welcome.
Welcome aboard.
So, and Jim, I'll introduce you at the end of the meeting. Next on the agenda was the CHIPS funding, and we got a letter that pretty much stated that they're going to reinstate our original amount. So, and I just wanted to verify it through him. So we should be seeing that letter telling us exactly how much we're getting. Old business, appointment to the vacant council position. We interviewed two people, Rick Akins and Louis Main. We got letters on each of them. And so I'd like to open the floor for a motion as to who you would like to appoint to the board.
I make a motion that we appoint Rick Akins to the vacant board position.
Second? Gilbert seconds. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to discuss a little bit. We, the town board, actually, Sue put out a letter in the newspaper and also on the webpage asking for letters. And we did receive letters, 33 individuals supporting Louis Main and 7 supporting Rick Akins. So my question is if we were asking for letters and asking how people, in the town were feeling about it, how can we disregard such an enormous difference?
Well, I'm going to tell you my own personal opinion on this.
Mhm.
I felt that even though Louis had more letters, I felt that they were solicited from a certain group, and Ricky did not have that. He didn't go and ask for them. The letters that he got, I believe, were from the heart. So in my opinion, I just don't feel right about, yes, Louis got a lot of letters. Yes, I'm sure he's a great guy. He's smart. He'd be great for us. But at this time, my opinion is that Rick is the better choice. Rick has taken an interest in the town. He's gone to every town event that's ever been held here. Personally, I've never really seen Louis at any of the events, not at a chicken barbecue, not at a church dinner. I don't recall seeing him at Summerfest.
Mhm.
So that's my opinion.
So in response to that, because obviously people had a similar feel about me. Well, Kelly's never been to a chicken barbecue or this and that, but I did spend my entire time here. There's never been a time where I haven't volunteered. I volunteered in all different kinds of aspects. I ran a soccer program. I volunteered at the school every single week. I did all kinds of things for my community. It wasn't seen necessarily by everybody who is sitting here at a town board. When everybody has a different point, and you know, you guys have obviously already made up your mind, but Dick, I would like it to be put on the record that Louis received support from 33 individuals that we as a town board solicited, and Rick Akins got 7. And when Sue makes the note that she feels like those letters were solicited from a group, if you look at the names of people that Rick Akins received his support from, they are leaseholders.
Not
They
all
are,
of them, Kelly.
and not all of these. That's my point, Sue. All of the names you got for Louis, just because somebody sent out an email asking for letters in support, all that did was give them the same communication. You put it in the newspaper. an
Which,
email-
because we had discussed it at last month's meeting. That's why it was put in the paper.
But it was put in the paper.
It was put in the paper.
Okay, so your response to it is now just being disregarded. So we asked for something, we received it, and now it's being disregarded.
I
And I
wouldn't
want
say
that
we're
to be clear in the
I
minutes.
wouldn't say we're disregarding it.
You're
I'm not gonna
disregarding
argue over it, but
Yeah.
that, like I said, that's my personal opinion.
Mhm.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
No.
I'll call for a vote then. Gilbert?
Rick.
Debbie?
Rick.
Kelly?
Ruth's name.
And I go for Rick. So Rick Akins will be the new board member until the end of the year. And I hope to see Louis' name on the ballot for the full-time position.
Well, I'm not sure why he would want to actually, after,
Well, you know,
This display.
that's his choice. Board of Review reappointment.
Which we forgot last month.
I don't know
Or
how we,
actually, it was forgotten in the fall. It should have been done in September. It's something that, anyway, all the way around, we got forgotten. Not that we needed it before next month, but
but we do need it.
yes.
So I would like to have a motion to reappoint Harold Pippin as the Board of Review person. So motion, I'll make the motion to appoint Harold Pippin.
I'll second it.
Gilbert seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we can be back. Next on the list is the solar proposal. And I did ask Alan to be here tonight just to make sure that if there's any further questions. So what we're proposing is to assess the solar projects on it based on a kilowatt system. So 1 to 5 kilowatts would be an assessment of 1,500. 6 to 10 would be 3,000. 11 to 15, 4,500. 16 to 20, 6,000. So it would increase by 1,500 for each area. Alan, do you have anything more to add to that? I know you did a lot of research on this, so.
What that turns out to be is that at the end, up to 1 megawatt, it's assessed a little bit higher than the lowest for a town or two, and yet not as high as some of the other towns. It's also stating that these figures are based on also just using 5 acres land. Some of the bigger ones that were assessed a little higher were using up to 20 acres of land. So that's why their assessments on some of the bigger solars were bigger, their numbers were larger than these were per kilowatt. So it depends again on the land too, but these smaller ones, you're not going to find these smaller ones that need more than 5 acres of land. So I think these figures are good. Just when you start getting into commercial ones.
Right.
So Alan, a commercial one, I mean, say it's on 15 acres. The 15 acres is going to be assessed, and then the solar is going to be assessed separately.
Yes.
Yeah. And what about like the usage? So I didn't really get an answer on that. So if you have, you know, a 1 kilowatt system and it's 20 years old, are they going to be assessed at the same as brand new?
Yeah, as long as it's producing the same power, it should. The only difference is, of course, being a little bit older, it might depreciate more. But this figure here is so much less than what that system would cost.
So there's not going to be any depreciation like figured into it.
As long as it produces the same power. Now, maybe when it was new, it might have been 5 kilowatts, but now after 20 years, it's only down to 1, then, you know, it would be into that lower bracket. So it would depreciate some depending on what it started at.
So you are saying then it's going to be assessed at, when you say that if it's producing less, then that means that you really are taxing on the kilowatts and not the actual solar panels.
Right.
So how are you to measure that?
Hopefully the owner's going to tell us how big the system is.
No, if you have a 1 kilowatt system and it's, you know, maybe it's at 75% now, how are you going to know that?
Again, hopefully the owner's going to tell you because they would know how much the system is producing.
So then,
by
it brings me to that question that I sent out in the email then. Are we then taxing the electricity that it's making and not the solar panels?
the kilowatt, yes.
So how are we doing that? It just, I'm having trouble like wrapping my head around that. How are we taxing people on the actual electricity that they're making? If that's the case, then what about the cloudy months and the rainy days? Like,
Wow. You can do that with winter, because if the wind isn't blowing, is it worth less than if it is blowing?
but we're not talking about winter though.
I know, it's basically the same thing you're saying, you know, the sun isn't out, you know, is it producing? That's what the system, when you bought it, how much it was supposed to produce, that's what you're gonna be valued at.
Okay, so that's different than what you just said.
No, it's by the kilowatt. When you buy a system, it's like,
Like if you buy a system, I understand, when you buy a system, it's at a certain kilowatt. So my question was, are we actually taxing the electricity that it's making? And your answer was yes.
that's right.
So if a community member comes to us and says, I keep a calendar here and it was cloudy 40% of the time, are we then going to take 40% of them?
You can't change your assessment every month.
So how can
In other words, like if you buy a system, we'll say for instance, there's one on Lake Zone, the guy bought it, got a building permit for it, it produces 7.5 kilowatts. There it is. Like, it's black and white. He's gonna be assessed as having 7.5. Whether he produces it or not, we don't care because we won't buy the value of what it is, what it can
So then
produce.
you are not taxing the electricity that it makes. You are
No, not by
taxing the
meter,
solar
no.
panel.
We have no idea what that is actually producing per day. It's what the system cost, or what the system is producing when it was bought, or
What
it
it's
can
capable,
produce.
what it's capable of producing.
Capacity of the system.
Okay, so that needs to be clear. So it's the capacity of the solar panel that we purchase, and that's what you're gonna tax it on.
Right, so his will be in that category of 6 to 10. His panel system will be assessed at 3,000. It costs 25,000. So I mean, do you want to assess
Well-
somebody by 25,000, which is going to cost them $1,000 a year? And then next year, you know, you depreciate the next couple years, so every year you're going to start depreciating.
Mhm.
You go with a kilowatt and it runs 7.5 all the time, you got a pretty straight figure of what you can assess that.
Yeah.
And that's what he paid for. It might not mean that it produces that, but if you bought something that produces 7.5 and can, then that's the maximum. It can produce that, it's capable of doing it. It's assessed at what it's capable of doing. And chances are, like, if you buy one that's 7.5, it might only produce 4 because of cloudy days and so forth on average. But it's what he bought it for.
Okay,
what
that's
it's
the
capable of.
answer I was looking for. Okay.
That's what it's capable of.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to like ask, we know how many people so far, we know some people that do have, and I'm sure we're missing a bunch of them. But I think I got a list of about 15. So I'll send letters out stating, what is your system producing? If you bought a new one, it was producing 9, but 20 years later, it can't produce 9 anymore, it's down to maybe 5 or 6. And maybe that's all your readings are, is 5 or 6. Send a letter back saying it produces 5 or 6. But the new ones, we know what they are because if you don't build them, that's out for. So you want to get a letter, you know, yourself, on, you know, how much does your system produce? That's what you'll be assessing.
Okay.
And I
So-
know I'm not gonna get honest answers because if they know that they're gonna be assessed by the kilowatt, their system might produce 20, they're gonna say it produced 5. How am I gonna justify that answer? You can't. So hopefully people
Well,
can be
I don't
honest.
know. Okay.
It's the same as if we did by cost.
Mhm.
You know, how much did your system cost? Well, geez, if I'm gonna be assessed cost, I didn't pay 25,000 for it.
That's the thing, though,
$3,500.
if you assess by cost, you wouldn't be assessing the whole system. You would only be assessing the solar panels. You're not gonna assess,
You can't assess the personal property.
exactly, which is most of it.
That's a lot of it.
Yeah, so the most expensive part of it is not what would be taxed.
The most expensive part is probably the batteries and the inverter system.
Right. Probably the least expensive part is a solar panel.
Probably.
And
Especially
these, right, these days they're pretty cheap. So, I don't know, I think that's something for the board to think about as well. If you can get a solar panel for $200 and you are, you know, if you have $1,000 worth of solar panels, your assessment's gonna be, it might be $3,000 higher.
I don't think you can produce 7 kilowatts with just $1,000 worth of solar panels. I mean, they're pretty, you know, they're really up to date now, but I don't think you can get that much electricity out of just $1,000 of panels.
So if you were sending a letter to everybody waiting for a response, we are not going to be meeting any kind of deadline for this year.
It's already in line.
It's already gone by. So there's no way for us to be in compliance this year. Okay. That's what I wanted to say.
Any other questions, Kelly?
No.
A motion to accept the solar proposal?
Well, I would like to say, I mean, we are out of compliance. We have a year before we can do anything about it. Why don't we give this a little bit more thought? See how, I mean, like, I don't know off the top of my head. Like, did you look at all, at the cost of solar panels that would produce this much?
No.
Maybe that's something we want to look into. You know, we have this, and I don't think this is, I think this is all right. But I still think that knowing now, you know, you clarified some things, maybe that's something that we really should be looking at, because
So you're thinking about maybe going back toward a cost assessment?
I guess in my head, I'm wondering how much money would the solar panels themselves cost for a 6 kilowatt system? I don't know that
I can
answer.
find that out.
Yeah.
Actually, I can ask Terry Zale. You know, he's got a 7.5 kilowatt brand new. I can ask him what he paid for just his panels.
Right.
His whole system was 25,000.
Yeah, and really, you don't have to ask too many people, because the price isn't gonna vary,
No.
you know, that much.
I can
between-
ask Amanda Potter, she can probably tell me. She sells the systems.
So, I mean, why don't we just table it for at least another month until we get, a little bit more specific information?
Gilbert, Debbie?
I don't think we know enough about the solar to even make a decision on it. First of all, the law should never have been passed because it ties our hands too much, but there again.
And I hate to throw a wrench in the fire, but I have now about 8 or 9 assessors with information on what they do, and out of the 9, there's 5 that do not put a value on it.
Right.
And
Yes,
2
but we
of them-
also don't know if those assessors, if
We
the
don't
town
know
exempts
exempt.
that.
Well, yes, we do. There are. There are town assessors with towns who have opted out that choose just not to ignore.
Well, that doesn't make it right.
Now, the question that I would have at that point, okay, is, okay, that town is opted out and they don't have any monetary thing in place. What happens if they get a commercial? That's the question
That's a good
that I would want to be asking.
Well, according to the Association of Towns, we can be sued. If a commercial comes in and we try to assess them, but not residential, they can sue us.
There's so much probably you'd have to word it that, a system that's not for profit. There's no value put on it.
Exactly.
Or one that's for profit.
That's what, see now, like Sue asked a couple of questions and people were like, the lawyer, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. The Association of Towns, I don't know the answer to that. It doesn't, commercial solar is completely different. And I know how the opt-out law is written. I know how that is written. And the reason that had to be passed is because you don't want the IDA saying you have to do this, you have to do a pilot. We have given ourselves the choice, if a commercial comes here, to make that decision for ourselves. But anyway, that's my opinion on that. But as far as the towns, and I mean, there are towns that are like that. What are they expecting to do if a commercial comes in? And are there any towns around that already have commercial sites and don't tax the residents?
There's, out of that list that I gave, there were 6 towns that do have commercial sites. I'm not sure if they opted in or out.
So there's a list, I think
Yeah.
there's a list on the Association of Towns. There's a list of opted out towns.
And and I don't know what their residential versus their commercial is, how they've done it for commercial. I know that there's a lot of them that have the pilot thing, but I don't know if their commercials have argued because the residential doesn't have an assessment, or now suddenly they do. I don't know that.
Do you, is that something you could find out for us, as which town has a commercial and has opted out? And then,
Oh, and it has opted out?
and has opted out.
Well, these 5 towns here have commercials: Lisbon, Governor, Potsdam, Canton, Ross City. So they do commercial,
Okay, Lisbon, Canton, Governor,
Potsdam, and Ross City. And one, 2, I think it's 2 of these towns don't put values on residential ones. They don't value
but if they didn't opt out, they wouldn't have to. So you don't know though which ones have opted out. So,
Well, I'm pretty sure Rossi, they don't assess residential ones.
and they've opted out?
That I don't know.
Right,
I never checked.
that's the magic question here. To see if any of them have opted out and still have commercial and how they handle that.
The 2 assessors do not see any valuation increase, and I don't know what 2, Bruce didn't tell me what 2 they were. They do not see any valuation increase in the sales of residential properties with solar panels.
Mhm.
Thus, they do not put a value on residential arrays.
Right.
2 of them use the building permit cost, but they also have exemption purposes. So they are still given exemptions. One assessor uses primarily $5,000 for each residential array, so he uses a flat rate, 5,000 no matter what it
Mhm.
One assessor uses a dollar amount per kilowatt to value. There's two appraisers, like I said, that don't see in sales any increase or decrease because they got solar.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
I think that would be a good start.
So do you want to make a motion to table this another month?
I'll make a motion to table the solar system assessment proposal.
Second,
I'll second.
Debbie seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
The culvert grant, I checked more into that, and because we discussed the bridge on Lake Livonia Road, which I was informed is not a bridge, it's a culvert. So, so I read through some more, I did talk to the highway superintendent of the county. He told me that there was a culvert grant under the same bridge grant. The problem is that the town has to, you have to pay for it before, everything has to be done before you can be reimbursed. And when I talked to Steve Green about it, he said when he had it checked out a couple of years ago, it was going to be almost 300,000. So I haven't done any more on doing a grant because I don't know if we want to go ahead and take a chance. You know, I don't know. What do you want me to do?
Well, if it was 300,000 a couple of years ago, it's probably doubled by now. So, but we do need to look into what, what should be done, could be done.
And I know that we're going to have to hire an engineer to come out and look at it before we can even start.
I mean, that's,
So,
something's gonna happen up there, and we're gonna be.
especially with all the extra traffic that's up through there now with the tractor trailers.
Right, and we are gonna be liable, and it's gonna cost us more than $300,000, so.
So, well, let me look into it some more. It's not due until May. And I'm gonna contact the county again and see if they can send their county engineer out to meet with us out there, and we'll go from there. So we'll kind of put that on hold for right now.
Yeah, we have well, we don't have too long, but
No,
even if we started putting contingency money away for that,
we do
for
budget,
down the
yes.
road, I think that we should be looking at that as far as when we start
Because
working
it's
on our
something that we
budget.
do need, yes.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so I'll continue looking into it and we'll move on from there. Did we get a no quote on the Zoom system? Okay, we'll postpone
He
that.
was gonna try to get it to me Friday and I didn't hear anything. But he said he's been very busy. So we'll hold that. I'll try to have information next month for us.
Okay, so we'll move on to committee reports, supervisor update. I'd like to make a suggestion that we open the town hall back up, open, whatever that is, especially for meetings. Zoom is good, but I think we're missing out on a lot of public participation, and so I would like to open up the town hall. And I got a call this morning that our water failed again. And I think it's just because it's not being used enough. It's not running through the,
They did suggest to us that I do know when they're coming now. So if we do the Clorox a week before,
before they test. So.
they suggest that we do that and it will probably be all right. So we know now that they come in the second Tuesday, and I have talked to Sue Land about that. So we're going to try to get into a system where we try to do that on the first Tuesdays. So it'll be prepared for them.
So what do you think about opening up the town hall back up?
to full use, or,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, how about we limit the capacity?
Well,
We're still at,
We're
we're
still
still
at-
at 25% for the building, so we can still only do 46 people in there. Like just when we were meeting before.
So the total, I'm sorry, so the total for anybody that's in there is 46 people.
Correct. Or 45.5, yeah. Have a baby. Yeah, and I mean, my own feeling is I think we, to the public, we still can't, because there's no way, I think, you know, we'd open ourselves up to issues
Right, I
with
mean,
that with the number of people, but I think in specific town purposes.
Because I know
my suggestion.
Kelly was looking for a meeting, and she has about 15 people, and we can't put 15 in here.
No,
So,
What if we open it for meetings and not parties yet?
oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, for meetings.
Yeah.
Any idea, any feedback?
I would be for that.
I think we need to start opening it up and gradually, because eventually we are going to be able to open up 100%. And I think it would be a good way to start getting the water circulated over there. And, you know, I think we need to start doing that.
Oh, hey, risk manager.
So the governor has allowed gatherings up to 50% on weddings and stuff like that.
Right.
I think you're definitely safe at 25. I know that the buildings, the county buildings are 25%. So I think you're fine.
But everybody has, I mean, in my opinion, if we are gonna do that, then like if we were having a meeting, I think everybody should be wearing a mask at the meeting. Because then we're, you know, setting people up to have 46 people in a small, you know, in an area like that. That's my opinion.
State guidelines are still maintaining social distancing of 6 feet with a mask on, even at reduced capacity. That has not been lifted.
So I would say if we open it up, we should be following those guidelines.
Which we do, yeah.
If we keep the tables up and like we were before, I think we'll be fine. Yeah, I think we need to start opening it up. Two meetings, you know, we don't want to open it up too much, but
The flip
And a
side of that,
couple-
just something to consider is who's gonna police that. Like who's gonna enforce that?
Yeah.
You know, if we do open it up, then we're gonna require those things, or you're gonna require those things. So, I mean, you can't put a restriction in place without having a way to enforce it. Just something to keep in mind. You know, if you open it up and it's open and you have nobody looking at it, then it might as well be 100.
But if we're only opening it for meetings, then there are going to be few, you know, there's how many other people, your group uses it. We'd have our meetings there. I would like to host a meeting there. But who else has meetings there at town hall?
I went in the past year.
Yeah.
well, and
So-
that typically is not, I mean, it's just been, and typically anytime we've run it, it's been for private.
For parties, so.
That, you know, we can continue to,
I mean, we have another blood drive scheduled, but we've had
oh,
those,
yeah, they do,
we've had those
they,
right along,
yeah,
so.
they take care of it themselves.
Mhm. So that's, I would be open to having it as long as we're following the guidelines.
I agree.
Okay, but again, Jody brings up the point, who's going to enforce those?
Well,
That's, I mean, we're gonna have to just be responsible. I mean, Debbie's in the one group, I'm in the other group, and then the rest of us will be there for our meetings, so.
we police ourselves. I don't think that, you know, we have to. I mean, I'm not gonna call the sheriff, have him come out here and police that. That's ridiculous.
I'm pretty
You have
sure
to
we're
take
capable.
responsibility, and hopefully the people that are attending these meetings and conducting these meetings are responsible enough to do what they need to do.
I would suggest that you have a sign-off sheet. Anyone who wishes to do this agrees to abide by the current COVID restrictions in place by the state of New York and the and the St. Lawrence County Health Department.
You sound pretty professional, Jody. You
Might
got
not have been
that
the first time
down
I've given that answer, so.
There you go. There's the ocean.
Yeah,
I am actually the county COVID officer
Uh,
also. So
Oh.
I would highly recommend that that's what you do. Have a sheet that whoever books the party or not, that books the meeting or rents the space, signs off that they will adhere to the New York
Hmm.
State guidelines on COVID
Right.
and the St. Lawrence County Public Health recommendations.
All right, you're gonna
That
send us one
covers
of
the
those?
town.
Are
That
you gonna
covers the
send
town.
us one of those forms?
Yes, I can actually.
There you go. So
Yeah.
you
Send that to me.
make a couple copies and put it in my box.
And that covers you, because then you said
Yes.
we've asked them, they've agreed to it, and,
Right.
then if, because it's not worried, you're not worried about people policing themselves. What you're worried about is somebody showing up and calling it in. A
Right.
participant in the meeting showing up, people don't have masks on, they call it in, then public health has to respond.
And actually, it should be for residents of the town of Hopkinton only that are, will hold meetings there. That should be, I mean, of course, you're gonna get participants that don't live in the town, but whoever conducts the meeting should be in town.
Well, you said there's really nobody else who's gonna conduct a meeting there. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's gonna be you
Right.
and me and Sue.
Right, right.
So a motion to open up the town hall.
I'll make the motion.
all
second.
meetings.
I'll second it.
Kelly made a motion, Debbie seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
One other thing, I've got an email from National Grid on the LED conversion program about converting our streetlights to LED. So before I did anything, I wanted to run it by the town because there will be an upfront cost. But I can do a letter if you give me permission, and they'll break it down and tell us what the exact cost would be.
I'll make a motion that you contact them.
Okay, Kelly made a motion, second.
Second.
Gilbert seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
And that was it for me. We'll do the trails under new business. Code enforcement.
Had nobody, we haven't had any work, any permits up there yet.
He was doing so good.
You started off slow last year.
Assessor.
St. Lawrence County Assessment Association actually held its meeting virtually on March 10th by Zoom connection. I've continued to revalue parcels for our assessment update. All inventories have been keyed on the computer and replicated to the real property office. The new equalization rate as of right now is 96%. It went to 96 before I even did any of this update. So it was 94, we gained 2% without doing anything. So it did go down, which we kind of thought it would, but it did. It went up, unheard of, but it went up. I've been in contact with our regional director, who's out of Syracuse, several times during the process, and he states that the tentative assessments equal or exceed 5% of the total award, which is, now that's what we're talking about the update. So we exceeded the 5% of the total award, which fell form number 6110, which is for New York State to review the changes and to consider a new equalization rate. The roll increased 7.7% so far, which means I will fill out the form and send it into the state for a special equalization rate. Our total increase as of the 1st of March has been over $8.6 million. And with 4 days sit with the roll and also previous proceedings, we may lose some of that value increase. I believe it still will remain at 5% increase. Hopefully we should receive 100% rate again. I was up in Canton today, and Bruce is now telling me that he thinks we gained upwards of $11 million after this update. So if that's the case, then we probably went below 8% on the total increase. I'll be sending out assessment change notices after the tentative roll book is finished. There will be 4 dates set aside for property owners to call and discuss the changes or send in information to agree their assessments. I can only accept submitted sales, comparisons, and/or appraisals for proof of changing assessments. Grievance night will be held on June 1st this year. We will only accept applications and information to agree their assessment by mail. Due to the COVID-19 epidemic, there will not be any open meetings. It will be held just like the 2020 BAR. All grievances will be handled by the Board of Assessment Review and determination will be sent back to the property owners. Also, I'd be accepting phone calls instead of not just mail, phone calls. And again, I've been installing the last, the inventory, excuse me, and new assessments on computer files, assessment rule along with address changes, building permits, and property.
This is from the project we hired Darren.
Yes.
for. Okay.
With an increase like that, if we increased it $11 million, even if we increased it $10 million, that's $50,000 for the town budget. If you left the tax rate exactly what it is now. So you can't accept more than what your budget is. So if your budget only asks for $4,000 increase, but we can do it, we can actually gain $50,000, you've got to lower the tax rate. That's where everybody can start paying less money per thousand. And that's how it always works. You can't accept that overage of what. But you can play with the numbers where now you can say, for instance, you would be, something like that would be a zero increase in your budget. It might even be a minus. Even if you left it at zero increase, you're going to gain a few $1,000s for extra stuff without going to the tax collector and saying, we need $10,000 more this year, and we got to raise the taxable or the
About 350,000 per culvert.
we have to go back up the road again. That's not gonna work.
Yeah, on that.
We had about $100 million. But it's definitely gonna help. And actually, with Darren's help, it's more than paid for itself. He did an excellent job, and I used his figures. It worked. I mean, there's gonna be some upset people that have big chunks of land because their assessments, there were some that were 300,000 went to almost 500,000, but they got 400 acres of land. So, there's gonna be some complaints, but it's across the board. Woodlands for everybody's the same, wastelands, everything's the same.
So we can ask for.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Alan? Library,
Other group did.
nothing. Museum,
I got a seamless gutter quote for that.
great.
They randomly called me Saturday morning, said he was gonna be in town in 20 minutes and can I meet him there? So I did. So I will be forwarding that along to Mike and Jake as soon as I get it, the actual write-up from the contractor.
Did you have a look at that one on the town hall?
Forgot.
Just can't.
But I can actually, I can run up and take a measurement on that. Just, I saw him measure it. It was pretty much just the length and downspouts, and I can ask him to write that up for another one there if you want to do that.
Yeah, just so, because it is pretty bent.
Pretty much just need the length and how many downspouts there are. And that's all he measured over here and just looked at
There's
it.
no downspouts on the town hall.
Okay, so we just need the length.
Like this.
Did you look over at the library as well?
Yes.
You did? Yeah, okay, good.
Yep.
I was fairly sure you were gonna do that.
So highway,
Our museum, I think we did have a meeting. Nothing major other than the fact we are looking at having Christmas in July to replace the Holly Berry sale. That's probably the biggest thing that came out of me. Would you say, Debbie? Really, other than that, but yeah, we really hated to lose that again this year. We knew that the Naval Festival was given we were going to be able to do that, but we did, we hate to lose Holly Berry again. So we're good, and Deb's been getting some good responses from vendors.
Yeah, I got 3 or 4. I think I'm gonna go ahead and probably end up doing it. A lot of people said they've never done that before. And with the fire department not doing their craft thing with their fireman field day, that I think we have a good chance of getting a lot of people interested.
And the idea is if we can do it in the park, they can be well distanced all through the park. And because I know when they come to the fire department, they have their own tents.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not as if we're gonna have to contribute that much, and I can do the work that we've had to do with the tables and stuff before, so it's to make that thing go around.
Things might look quite different by July too.
Yeah,
As far as
agreed.
what we can do.
Yeah. So, yeah.
we might be able to have a
That's right.
Just throwing that out there. Highway report. I did talk to Walt this morning. Of course, he's done as of yesterday. Walt took over this morning. He was going to come to the meeting, but he really didn't feel comfortable because he's only been in the job one day. So I told him to wait and he could come to the April meeting and we would introduce him then. But he did give us a report. Plowed 26 out of the last 35 days. Moved snow with the loader in the snow plow turnarounds. Took link out of sander chains on both trucks 7 and 8. Serviced truck 1, serviced the boom mower. Put coal patch in the potholes and pressure wash sand and salt off all the truck grates. One of our highway crew has to have surgery on Friday, so he'll be out for at least a week. But the part-time guy will be able to go in if anything happens, so I think we're doing okay there.
Yeah, Chris Tracy's been named as deputy.
Oh, yes, and he's naming Chris Tracy as his deputy highway superintendent for the rest of the year, until we get a new highway guy in.
Just, does he have the same email?
Yes, it's highway, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's the nice thing about that. The only ones really that we would have a problem is just council. Everybody else, it works out.
Town facilities. Well, one thing we had to do, we had to pull the pump out of the well over by the museum because it furnishes water to this building. And they pulled the pump out and it went all the way over towards town hall and back again. I think it's what,
400 feet down, or 400 plus feet down. Yeah, it's a deep one.
So they put a bigger pump in this time and said it should work a little better. At $2,200, it better work. That's all I have for town facilities. That and our water bill again. Rescue, nothing. They're just starting to meet again because of the COVID. So, AHLS Health Center, Gilbert.
I talked to Nancy. They did survey Elliot's and the building isn't on the property. That's a plus. And you gotta do some changing on the doctor and stuff. Said that's running fairly good from what I heard from Nancy. Okay.
Okay. So are they thinking of asking the doctor to buy the building or what?
Would like to
Okay.
be nice.
Big like
He's put so much money in it, hopefully.
I'd like to see him take it,
Yeah.
really. It's not gonna be a moneymaker for any of the towns, I don't think.
I don't think so either.
I think it would be a burden on from all of us.
Groundskeeper is not here, but he's doing his job.
And he's helping out at the food pantry. Woo-hoo, he's doing a great job.
On to new business. St. Lawrence County is thinking of charging a fee for ATVs, UTVs to use the trails. There was an article in North Country Now about it, and I know Kelly brought it up that you wanted to discuss it.
I just wondered how everybody felt about it, because maybe it's our opportunity now to contact the county
Yes,
and let them know how we feel as a town.
for public hearings.
I mean, I just think it's something that we have to consider, because obviously we get a lot of them in the town. And say if St. Lawrence County puts in a permit fee, but Franklin County or the other surrounding counties don't, then would we lose some of that traffic? Would we lose some of that business? Is that something that we want to see done?
Jody, do you know any more about
I
that?
don't actually, I just what you read, I just saw it in the memo that came out from the county, but
I mean, I mean, as far as I can tell, you know, the groups, the four-wheeler groups, the snowmobile groups, they're pretty self-sufficient. They pay fees to their their groups, as far as I know. And I don't belong to any, so I mean, I don't really know firsthand. But I believe that they pay fees to be, to like, you know, have the people come and groom and things like that. So then St. Lawrence County puts on another fee. I'm not sure, you know, I'm in favor of that because I think they already are pretty self-sufficient.
I know from just where the trail crosses my property up there, every spring they bring in quite a bit of gravel and equipment, and the county's definitely incurring a cost to maintain that system. I don't know what the fee they're talking about is, but
But is it the county who's fixing it?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know these things, but maybe those are questions we can
yeah,
ask.
they do maintain that trail system. So I don't know how much I couldn't give you a dollar figure, but I know, like right now, they have it blocked off because of the mud. But once the mud starts to ease up, they do bring 3-4 loads of gravel and their bucket loader and stuff like that. They're there for a day. But I'm sure it's not just there that they do that.
Right.
But if they're thinking of increasing fees or having people register their utility vehicles and so on like that, the money eventually comes down from the state to us. But, you know, people are just taxed to death on everything. That's the unfortunate thing.
Well, you know,
I think we should,
there's another question too. I mean, how are they going to enforce it? How are they going to know if you
Well,
paid a fee to?
So they're gonna pull them over and they're gonna ask them.
Yeah, you know.
right. Well, they'll have their little stickers on them, just like they did for boats and
Right.
snowmobiles. I mean, they used to have them on.
I
snowmobiles.
know that there was, they're having public hearings, but I can't remember when the dates.
I think it's on the page you gave us, isn't it?
I gave you dates.
No, there's no date on that.
No.
It just says public hearing. We had a resolution setting a date,
Oh.
but then he didn't give us
Right,
the
didn't
date.
give us the dates. And I want to say the dates were in the paper though, but.
I mean, I'm certain that they're going to get a huge crowd for that public hearing. But I just wondered if we wanted to send something in, you know, from the town.
Against it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I think I probably have to call Rick. Like, I didn't know. I thought they maintain those trails themselves. And, you know, just from what Jody said, he's saying that. So what is the cost? Are they incurring a
Right.
big cost on it?
And
If
I
they
don't
are,
I don't know what they're talking about as far as the fee. Is it $5 or is it, you know?
No, I think it was like $45.
But yeah, I mean, what's the magnitude versus what they're spending on it? Because that's the flip side too. You have to think if the county is spending $100,000 to maintain these trails and they're not recouping any of that, that item will be on the chopping block at some point for sure.
Right.
So
Right.
just, you know, I don't know what that number is. I have no idea, but
Right.
you know, it's something to keep in mind. But something like that is going to be the first thing that gets chopped if there's a shortfall.
I think that so works through that. Because I belong to the snowmobile club. You pay a membership of at least $25 a year. And I think that includes membership for the club that you belong to. But I think they send so much of that to the St. Lawrence County, so you belong to the St. Lawrence County Club at the same time.
Yeah, that could be.
That's gotta be how you do it.
I do know that it's county vehicles that are out there when they do work on it. So.
And the county owns all the groomers and stuff too, and they can't do that without some kind of.
Right.
so the counties own the groomers,
Yeah,
but then individuals, private individuals do the grooming?
yes, the club members have like the one that's established over in Brazier, it's a groomer that does from Brazier to Messina, one trip, then it also goes to Moira, then it also comes this way. And it's members that do that.
Yeah.
They also get funding from the state through the snowmobile registrations.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure your paperwork is done right and on time, and you have to show justification of how much work you do, how much money you spend, and how many miles of trail, and there's different classes in order to get reimbursement from the state. A lot of the money for snowmobiling from registrations that goes to the state never makes it back to towns and counties because of the lack of paperwork. and the state kind of counts on that. A lot of that money never makes it.
Okay. I mean, maybe we just want to leave that up to the county. I just wondered if anybody, you know, like, I mean, I've learned more here tonight, so it's, you know, I don't really know how I feel about it. I mean, I probably will call Rick and ask him some questions. But they'll probably have a public hearing before our next meeting.
I think Vicky has her hand up. I don't know if this is old or not. Hold on a minute.
I
You
just
got your
wanted
hand
to,
up, Vicky?
yeah, I just wanted
Okay.
to comment on the trail system. Because this, like you said, the snowmobilers, they do pay a $45 fee every year for each snowmobile. And it is either collected through the club or through your state when you register the snowmobile. And the county does get money from the state of New York. They're still waiting for their check this year, but they do get money back from that. The problem with the four-wheelers or the UTVs is they have no way of collecting that money through a registration process because we cannot register them. You can register four-wheelers, you cannot register UTVs. 85% of the vehicles on the trails are UTVs. They are not four-wheelers. So I don't know how they plan to enforce this collecting of $45. They don't have the manpower to go out there and ride the trails and make sure everybody has a permit. I think it's a good idea. I mean, I do know they incur a lot of expenses. The Jones Road Bridge is one example. They had to go in and replace that bridge temporarily so that it would be open for the seasons last year. I do know that they plan on taking out that temporary one this spring and replacing it with a permanent one. So they do incur large expenses. I just don't know how they think they're going to enforce this $45 permit fee.
Maybe they think they're making enough money on the fines for people who don't have the
You-
registration.
You do, they issue tickets already for riding UTVs because people ride them without them being registered because we can't register them. So you go to court, they tell you you're riding an unregistered vehicle, you plead not guilty because you can't register the vehicle, therefore there's nothing, so you just pay the surcharge and you're on your way. The county gets nothing, the state gets it all.
Yep.
So that's just and the public hearing's April 5th.
Thank you.
When is it?
April 5th.
Like I know this year, the sheriff's department didn't have funding to fix their snowmobiles to police the trails. So their snowmobiles were down most of the season. I was just talking to them yesterday.
Oh,
Wow.
Or Friday, not yesterday, Friday, yeah.
I mean, go to Tug Hill, you have to buy a permit
Right.
to ride the trails. If you go down there, you have to have a permit to ride the trails at Tug Hill.
And I mean, if you look just at the Adirondacks, they're talking about getting permits for even hikers now.
Yep.
Right. So maybe we do need to think about doing that, but
Well, we're not really gonna do it. It's the county that's gonna do it. So I was just thinking if we wanted to send them something that we were not in favor of it, but maybe we're in favor of it after the things that we've heard tonight. So,
thanks for the information.
yeah.
So Kelly, if you want to call Rick
Yeah.
and then just email us the responses, that would be good.
You know, just from the risk manager talk train here, we want the trails in good shape. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want them to be dangerous
No, right.
because somebody gets hurt. I mean, that hurts everybody.
Mhm.
You know, the county does insure the trail for injury, but that money still comes from the same pot everything else comes from. So, you know, and if there's a fatality on that trail, I can tell you, insurance, workers' comp, everything's going up. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there's only so much in the pot.
True.
Okay. Mileage resolution. Trying to tighten things up on, so if we ever get an audit, we're doing everything legal. So I sent out a sample mileage reimbursement resolution. Gilbert, I think I left a copy in your mailbox. Yep. So discussion on that, do you want to proceed with that? Do you want to put it on hold? I mean, basically, this just says, you know, that when you're out on business, yes, you'll be covered, but not from your home, but from here to where you're going.
I would say we should put this through.
So you're making a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the mileage reimbursement rates for
I'll make a
2021.
motion. Second? Gilbert seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Hey,
Did you say the rate? It's a rate change or just
no, rated.
Policy.
Yeah, just policy. St. Lawrence County Hazard Mitigation Plan. Is anyone interested in serving on this committee?
You
They
come
have-
hang out with me.
What?
You come hang out with me. I'm on the committee.
I haven't sent this back in yet because I was hoping someone would come forward, but I can do it if no one else wants to do it. I mean, it's something that we all need. We need to have the plan in place, so. So if you want to make a motion to appoint me, go ahead.
I make a motion that we appoint you.
You just fired me this morning. Debbie made a motion, a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sure, everyone says aye.
Did you say aye
And whatever.
Whatever.
Military child proclamation. We got this and I figured it wasn't gonna hurt us to do this. Did everyone get a chance to read it?
Yes.
Yes, so I don't need to review the whole thing, blah, 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 blah.
I make a motion that we accept this proclamation.
Hey, did we make a motion second? Second, all in favor? Aye. And I already introduced the deputy town clerk.
She is also taking Luann's place as a deputy registrar. She was, Luann really wasn't comfortable with that piece of it. It's, so.
Privilege of the floor again? Motion to adjourn.
Did you say? did you-
I'm going to have to adjourn because it's really not.
Okay.
I just
I'll
dropped
just-
in.
I would just like to quickly say that our numbers, you know, they're slow and steady for the food pantry. So Debbie helps out too, and I'm very thankful for that. And it's, we gave 18 boxes away, which I think is pretty darn good. So hopefully it'll just keep going up little by little.
Good job.
Oh, hold on, Vicky has a hand up. I don't know if it's new or not. Hang on. I don't know how to make it go away, so.
You can't make me go away.
Was that new or old?
No, I lowered it.
Okay, all right. Just checking. It's still there. I don't know if it's.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Debbie made a motion, second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now I will. I'm going to introduce Jim Boardway. Jim is moving up from Screw Lake. He's interested in running for the highway superintendent position. So he was out here for the week, he thought he'd stop in.
It's not real easy to meet everybody in town, you know, under the conditions that we're under. But I just wanted to stop in and say hello and maybe just give you a brief summary of my work experience. I millwright for 10 years, and in that process, I heard you speaking about OSHA. I was a member of the EPT committee to keep things as safe as we could, and I did work with OSHA in that capacity. Was responsible for budgetary demands, maintaining equipment, and 3 other maintenance personnel under me. And after that, I had my own renovation and excavation business the area, haven't lived here in a long time. But a few years ago, I bought what was once my grandparents' property on Circle Road over near where there used to be a bridge, if anybody's old enough to remember that. You know, not everybody remembers that. And, but that was my grandparents, Ben and Irma Wood. And so pretty excited to be back. And it's gonna take me a little time to get it as nice as it was when I was a kid, but we're working on it. Working on it. And so hopefully I can win the election for town supervisor, just for highway supervisor. If anybody has any questions, you know, I'm glad to answer them.
Where are you moving back from?
I live down in Chestertown, it's just south of Spring Lake.
Glad to have you back.
Good to be back.
Yeah.
We good with this?